Hi my loves, welcome to Happy Eating, hosted by Black Amethyst Naturals. Today we are going to be cooking something that is near and dear to my heart, y'all. We're gonna be making green beans. When I was younger, I used to eat green beans, I would say probably once or twice a week. But now that I've gotten away from eating like canned green beans, and I never really ate frozen, but you can get some good frozen ones, and you can hook them up. Well, I'll talk to you about that later, but you can do that. But since I don't tend to do that, I usually like to try to go for the fresh ones. I don't eat them as often as I used to, but honey, I still love me a bowl of green beans. I did a poll on social media, and I was like, anybody else just sit down and eat a whole bowl of green beans, or is it just me? I found out there's a whole tribe of us. So if you are part of the tribe, you understand. And if you are new to this, it's cool. Come on. Maybe after this recipe, you'll be ready to eat a whole bowl of green beans by themselves too, okay? As usual, I'm gonna remind you that we are here to make plant-based recipes delicious. So we're gonna take some of our favorite recipes, some of our traditional cooking, and we're gonna find ways to sub out different ingredients and different cooking methods to make it its healthiest version, but it's still gonna be delicious because in this kitchen, the ancestors seasoned the food, okay? Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of Crockpot green beans, okay honey? These are 3 types of string beans. You have purple string beans, green string beans, and then you have yellow string beans, which are sometimes called wax beans. Those actually are my favorite. I really like the taste of those. The first thing we're going to do is wash these. They're fairly easy to wash. All you have to do is keep rinsing them until you make sure that the water runs clear. Next, you're going to want to cut off the stems. You can use a knife, or you can use my preferred method of scissors. It makes things a lot easier. And you can also use the scissors to cut the string beans to the length and desired size that you want. And now some entertainment while you cut your string beans. So every once in a while, I try to share with you guys a story of one of my family members, just to, bring you in, let you see a little bit behind the curtain. And my aunt absolutely loved my green beans. I told you guys a story about my cousin one day, but my aunt got my cousin beat. Like she requests the green beans ahead of time. She like, make sure I want some green beans. So I try to make sure that if I'm ever cooking anything and I know my auntie's gonna be there, that I make sure I make her some green beans, because sis really loves them. And when I tell y'all, it was a while there that she was having some like health stuff going on, and she couldn't eat a whole lot of food with a lot of different seasonings and stuff. So we would like go out to the restaurants, and she'd be like, listen y'all, just bring me chicken breasts and like steamed vegetables and don't put nothing on it. And during those times, my auntie was still eating my green beans, y'all. And if you know anything about me, I like to put some seasonings in there. So, that really spoke to me, that she really must have liked my food, because the seasonings must have bothered her a little bit, but she was willing to risk it all for a good bowl of green beans. So, if you don't believe my taste buds, believe my auntie's taste buds, okay? So, right after you get all your string beans cut, then you want to add them to 32 ounces of vegetable broth or stock. Turn your crock pot to high and cover with the lid. Now we're going to peel and cut our red onion. So you see how these layers are thin? Those are the ones that you want to remove. Those are the ones you'll get in your mouth and they'll have a funny texture and you can't chew them. So right underneath those usually 2 top layers that are thin is a thicker layer. Can you see how thick it is? You can peel that one off just to be on the safe side, but you don't have to. And now everybody's favorite part, cutting an onion. So we want to cut off both of the butts. That's what I call them, the ends where the onions grow out of the ground. Want to cut both of those sides off. And that way you can have a flat surface to work with. You guys know when we talk about cutting stuff, we always want to make sure we put it on the most stable surface that we can to make sure our knife doesn't slip so we don't cut ourselves. This is pretty much how I cut my onion every single time I cut one. This is a really easy way to cut it into different sizes. So you can just, make smaller cuts or larger cuts depending on what size you want it to be. And you can see the difference in the sizes here. I cut this one kind of a medium size, and I cut these other ones in the smaller size. So you see, I just made smaller cuts to make them smaller, larger cuts to make them bigger. For this recipe, you could do your onions whichever size you like, so whatever your personal preference is. And a trick about cutting onions, if you put the onion in the refrigerator and make sure it's cold before you cut it, you'll have less tears. Another trick for onion, just learn to cut them really, really fast, okay? In this recipe, we added 1 medium-sized red onion. Alright, let's peel some garlic. So the first thing we want to do is take our clove of garlic and we want to smash it. So you don't want to push down too hard, but you want to kind of get a good crack in it. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to peel off that thin layer that's on the outside. Sometimes there are 2 or 3 layers that are stuck on there pretty good, and after you crack it, they should come off fairly easy. The next thing you want to do is get rid of the butt. That's the piece right there that is attached to the plant. So we want to cut that off so we don't have that in our mouth, because it's going to be tough. After you cut that off, then you want to start chopping your garlic. And you can do it like this. I usually be careful with your fingers. You know, you always want to make sure you don't get your fingers in the way. But I usually do really, really, really thin as I can, slices into the garlic without cutting all the way through so it stays together. So I cut one direction really thin, and then I go back in and flip it around and cut it the other direction. And it usually makes it easy for, kind of just to start off to have smaller pieces. Garlic is notorious for running away from you when you're trying to chop it, and I'm not helping myself at all by using a glass cutting board right now, because that's going to make it fly even further. When chopping it like this, the trick is to try to get all of the garlic to stay as tight as possible, and then you can take your knife and kind of go up and down over the little pile and just keep piling it back up. It's going to spread out every time you go over chopping it, but just put it back together and then chop it again. You actually don't have to get garlic super duper small if you don't want to. The flavors come out of garlic really nicely when you're doing it in something like the Crockpot, and so if you bite into a piece of that, even if it's bigger, it won't just like have your whole mouth on fire with the garlic flavor. Now, if you want to be on some expert level stuff, which is what I tend to do, is grab a food processor if you have one and run that garlic through the food processor. You can add a little water in this case, since we're going to be adding it to the stock already, and that'll make it a little easier to chop up. That way you don't have to have garlicky fingers. Add about 3 good sized cloves of garlic and turn your crock pot up to high. Let's get to seasoning. We're going to add a tablespoon of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of sea salt, 1 teaspoon of freshly ground pepper, half a teaspoon of seasoned salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt, and then 1/2 teaspoon of regular salt. You're going to add that all to your crock pot and stir it up good. And if you do like me and let the seasoning sit there for a second, they're going to get a little clumpy. That's okay. Just stir it in as much as you can. And then while the green beans are cooking, the clumps will dissolve later. So you'll be okay. If you noticed earlier, the fresh ground pepper I put in there was a blend. It was a mix of black, white, green, and pink peppercorns. So that definitely gives you a different flavor. The green beans tend to float, so if you use your spoon and kind of push it down, you can see if you have enough broth in there. It just needs to be enough to cover the top of the green beans. Put your lid on so that you can keep your steam inside of your crock pot, keep all that liquid in, and then leave them to boil for about 20 minutes. They're probably going to look something like this. This is a good time to make sure that there's still enough liquid so that they don't stick on the bottom, and you can give them a good stir. Put the lid back on and turn it down to low. Let them simmer for at least another hour or more until they're tender. Sometimes I actually let mine simmer overnight. I usually turn it down to the keep warm instead of the low. Be careful if you do that though. My crock pot has a lid that keeps all the moisture in. If yours doesn't have a lid like that, some of the moisture could escape and then you can end up burning your green beans on the bottom, and that's no good. All right, so honestly, how y'all feel? Y'all feel good about the green beans? I try to make it as simple as possible. You know, sometimes you got to do a whole lot of, and you know, we had the greens recipe, and I know y'all probably looked at me do that greens recipe in a couple of minutes and was like, this gonna be quick. And it wasn't quick. But it's worth it. So also, you know, with this recipe, it's a little intense, but like I said, if you use that trick of using the scissors or just grab them green beans, you know, rinse them off at the sink, grab them and sit down while you're watching your favorite show. Had the kids help you, had your boo help you, had your mama, your daddy. Y'all know we like to say on the Tribe Vibe. Tell your mama, your daddy, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your auntie, your uncle, and them. Have all of them people come in and help you snap them green beans, okay? So it don't take forever. But definitely the trick with the scissors, super quick, makes it super easy. Just throw them after you cut them, throw them right into the crock pot, and you good to go, honey, okay? So I usually like to do them overnight. That way it doesn't take a whole lot of time. So if you're really into getting you some fresh green beans, try it that way. You could do the same recipe with the frozen green beans too. You could do the same recipe with the canned green beans too. We'll talk about this another day in depth. Today is not gonna be the day, but if you're curious, just go ask Google. Google got all the information. Try to find you a reputable source. But canned foods have, you know, they can have a little extra salt in them, and sometimes the stuff in the can can get into the food, and that's no good. And so if we can eat fresh, that's what we want to try to do first, okay? If you can't do that, try to go to the frozen. When you go to the frozen, we always want to make sure anything that's packaged, what we do, we flip it over, we read the ingredients and see what's in there, make sure it's just green beans. They had no bunch of crazy chemicals and nothing like that, okay? All right, my love. So thank you for showing up today. I appreciate you as always. This has been Happy Eating, where we don't need any music to dance, just good food. All right, my loves, I'll see you next time.